They thought she was just another broke trainee with no clue and no future. But Leona Avery, 44, wasn't there to learn. She was there to listen. Disguised in sneakers and silence, the woman who built a luxury empire from scratch walked into her own dealership and uncovered a culture of cruelty hiding behind polished glass. What she did next wasn't a speech, it was a reckoning. And by the time she revealed the truth, no one left untouched. Not even her. It was a thick, humid morning in Dallas, Texas, the kind that clung to your skin and slowed your thoughts. From across the street, a woman sat silently in the driver's seat of a beat-up silver Impala. Her fingers tapped the worn steering wheel in a steady rhythm, but her mind was anything but calm. Her name was Leona Avery, and at 44, she wasn't someone who had ever needed to prove herself to anyone. She built Avery Elite Motors from scratch. No inheritance, no safety nets, no backup plans. Just hustle, long nights, and a lot of locked doors she forced open. And now, sitting outside the flagship dealership she once dreamed of owning, she had a gut feeling something was terribly wrong. The warning signs hadn't screamed, they whispered. Customer complaints dismissed by middle managers, sales slipping in patterns that didn't make sense, and vague excuses that sounded too rehearsed. But more than that, it was the tone of the showroom reports. The way her team talked about brand alignment, as if image meant more than integrity. Leona didn't build this company to become some sterile temple of polished chrome and shallow charm, but somewhere along the way, something in the foundation had started to crack. She could have done what most executives do. Call a meeting, review spreadsheets, hire a consultant. But Leona knew better. Culture problems don't show up in charts. You have to feel them in the air. And the only way to feel it was to walk right into it, unseen. So she left her usual heels at home. She wore an old pair of scuffed sneakers and an oversized sweatshirt from a community college she never attended. Her natural curls were pulled back under a cheap baseball cap, and the leather handbag she usually carried was replaced with a faded canvas tote. No one seeing her would think she owned anything, much less a multi-million-dollar enterprise. That was the point. Inside the Impala, the air was stale, but Leona stayed still for a moment longer. What she was about to do wasn't just about identifying poor service or a few bad attitudes. Deep down, she suspected something darker, something harder to name. A rot, maybe. The kind that starts small but spreads through a place like mold behind polished walls. Something that could never be fixed until it was exposed. There's a psychological cost to building something from nothing. Founders like Leona often carry their identity in their companies. When things go wrong, it doesn't feel like a professional failure. It feels personal. And what she feared most wasn't losing money. It was losing the soul of the business she had built with her bare hands. Worse still, she feared that people she had trusted might be the ones quietly undoing everything she stood for. When she finally stepped out of the car, it wasn't with swagger. It was with a quiet resolve. She crossed the lot slowly, inhaling the familiar scent of heated asphalt and new tires. The dealership's glass doors loomed ahead, spotless and intimidating. Behind them, she knew, were luxury SUVs, designer suits, and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. What she didn't know, but would soon learn, is that beneath the showroom shine lay a system of unspoken judgments, biases running on autopilot. Employees who sized people up at a glance, not by their credit scores or driving history, but by shoes, hair, and how they talked. A culture that rewarded fast talkers and dismissed anyone who didn't match a fantasy of affluence, and more dangerously, a leadership layer that had quietly stopped caring. That morning, Leona didn't walk in to play a role. She walked in to witness, to listen, not just to what people said, but to the stories they told with their eyes, their posture, their silences. Because sometimes the most powerful things are revealed when people think they're not being watched. What she was about to find would shake her, enrage her, and eventually empower her to tear it all down and rebuild from the ground up. Not just the dealership, but the idea of what leadership should look like, what respect should feel like, and who deserves to be seen. The showroom air was sharp with artificial citrus, pumped in by the automated system Leona had installed years ago to elevate the experience. But this morning, standing at the edge of the sales floor as an unrecognizable trainee, the space felt colder. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the people. The first one to notice her was a man in a tightly tailored navy suit, fiddling with his cufflinks at a marble desk. He gave her a quick once-over, the kind that scanned for labels, polish, and purpose. His name tag said, Jared Dunley, Senior Consultant. His smirk said everything else. You here to deliver something? He asked, not unkindly, but not kindly either. No, Leona replied, adjusting the baseball cap that shaded half her face. HR sent me. I'm starting today. He didn't ask her name, just jerked his head toward a glass office without looking up. That's Dev's problem now. Inside the office, Devin Sloan, mid-50s, half awake behind a glowing laptop, barely reacted. Another rookie, he muttered, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Desk in the back. Read the blue binder if you want. Most people quit before they finish it anyway. He didn't offer a handshake, didn't even ask why she looked vaguely familiar. As Leona followed the echoes of her own footsteps down the polished black floor, she passed rows of Cadillacs, Porsches, and Range Rovers. Every inch gleamed under the ceiling lights. But the team, they didn't. Clusters of salespeople chatted in low voices, their laughter louder than their work. A few looked her way, eyes lingering long enough to judge, then sliding right off. A young woman in stilettos and perfect makeup whispered to a coworker, then broke into a snicker. Leona kept her head down. The desk they'd given her was shoved into the corner, behind a column and half blocked by a stack of promotional brochures. The training binder was covered in dust. She opened it anyway. Across the room, no one greeted the older man and woman who had wandered in, looking at a used Lincoln. They hovered awkwardly before turning to leave. Jared spotted them, made a face, and walked the other way. That was the first sign, but it wasn't the worst. An hour later, Leona overheard a group of three laughing by the espresso machine. I give her a week, said the woman in stilettos, Ariana, flipping her long hair. Bet she thinks a crossover is a church choir. Jared added, she parked that tin can right out front. Thought we towed junk like that. Devin chimed in from the hallway. She's not going to sell anything. Doesn't fit the brand. Not exactly premium, is she? They didn't whisper. They didn't lower their voices. Because they didn't think she mattered. Leona sat frozen, hands clenched on her lap. Every insult pierced a different layer. Her disguise, her pride, her past. She had heard people talk like that before, when she was broke and working her way through mechanic school. The tone was always the same. Mockery dressed up as banter, exclusion packaged as policy. What she witnessed that morning wasn't just a lack of kindness. It was a total absence of psychological safety. No one in that building would risk challenging someone like Devin. No one would call out Ariana or Jared, even when they mocked customers to their faces. In this place, conformity ruled. Groupthink had calcified into culture. Behind the sleek branding and Instagram-worthy showrooms was a hollowed-out system, a culture where fitting the image mattered more than understanding the product, where selling dreams to the right kind of customer mattered more than actually listening. The irony was bitter. They judged Leona by her shoes and her silence. They thought premium meant perfection on the outside. But the luxury they sold was superficial, plated on top of a foundation riddled with rot. She saw it in how they ignored a mother with a toddler. Too much noise, too much work. She saw it when a black teenager walked in with his dad and no one offered them a brochure, let alone a test drive. The salespeople barely glanced at them before turning away. It was classism, it was bias, and it was happening in her name. There was a moment mid-afternoon when Leona nearly broke cover. A customer asked her a question about the financing process, and as she started to respond, Devin swooped in, cut her off, and pulled the man away with a rehearsed smile. She's still learning, he said with a wink. He never came back. By 3 p.m., Leona was exhausted, not from the work, but from watching the brand she built turn into a barrier, a facade. She stared out at the mirrored panels lining the showroom walls. She had installed those years ago to reflect light, make the space feel open. But now they reflected something else, an entire system hiding behind polished glass, unwilling to confront itself. The final moment of clarity came just before closing. In the break room, while filling a paper cup with lukewarm water, Leona overheard Jared bragging. You see the guy with the sandals earlier? he laughed. Didn't even bother asking his name. No way that dude was going to buy a 60 grand truck. Same with that chick in the head wrap, Ariana added. Looked like she wandered in off the bus. Some people just don't belong here. Devin chuckled. It's not prejudice, it's instinct. We know the kind of people who buy from us. You learn to read the room. It was said casually like weather talk. But Leona stood there, fists clenched around the cup, her stomach sinking. This wasn't just about rude comments. It was about a deeply ingrained culture of dismissal. They weren't selling excellence. They were selling exclusion, and they didn't even know it. What made it worse was that the systems meant to protect against this, training, leadership, accountability, had all failed. There were no audits, no evaluations, just unchecked bias parading as professionalism. This was more than a personnel issue. It was a systemic collapse, a reflection of a wider trend sweeping through American workplaces, where companies chase image and forget intention, where brand becomes armor and the people underneath are left behind. Leona walked back to her desk in silence. Tomorrow they'd find out who she really was. But tonight, she would go home. Remember the girl who once cleaned hubcaps for cash and write a new plan. Not a speech, not a memo, a reckoning. The clock struck 5:30 p.m. Devin clapped once, loud enough to startle the silence. All right, that's a wrap, he called out, like he hadn't spent most of the day rotating between his phone, his inbox, and the espresso machine. Friday drinks at Miller's, don't forget, Jared added, adjusting his cufflinks like he was closing a stock deal instead of ignoring 3 walk-in customers. Laughter floated through the showroom like perfume, expensive and hollow. Leona stood slowly, brushing invisible dust off her oversized sweatshirt. Her sneakers squeaked slightly against the marble. No one noticed. To them, she was still the ghost in the corner. But she wasn't invisible anymore. Not to herself. She walked past the glinting chrome of a custom Escalade, stopping at the center of the showroom. Between a line of Jaguars and a Cadillac XT6, she turned toward the cluster of employees gathering near the exit. Then she clapped. Just once. Sharp. Commanding. Heads turned. Conversations halted. Devin blinked from his glass office. Ariana paused mid-laugh. Jared froze mid-text. Can I have everyone's attention for a moment? Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a dropped wrench. Confused glances passed between them. No one moved. You probably don't know who I am, she said, reaching up to remove the cap. Her curls spilled down. Then she removed the glasses. The room shifted. But I know exactly who you are. Silence stretched long. Tension buzzed in the lights. My name is Leona Avery, and I own this dealership. Gasps. Audible ones. Devin stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. Ariana dropped her stainless steel tumbler. Jared went pale. I built this company, she continued, voice steady. Not from funding, not from family money, from a gravel lot on the edge of Oak Cliff, from weekends fixing brake pads with blistered hands, from selling 10-year-old trucks to single moms trying to stay mobile. The room was frozen. I didn't come here today to fire anyone, she said. At least not at first. She took a slow step forward, then another. Her eyes locked on Jared. But what I saw in this showroom was a disgrace. She looked at Devin. A manager who scrolls while customers walk out the door? Then Ariana. A top seller more focused on appearances than ethics. A wave of discomfort washed over them. Feet shuffled, eyes dropped. I saw you judge a family based on their shoes, Leona said. Ignore someone because their accent didn't match your idea of who belongs. She turned to the others. You laughed at me, mocked me, said I didn't fit the brand. You talked about customers like they were obstacles. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The weight was in the truth. I walked in here wearing $28 sneakers and a discount sweatshirt, and you treated me like dirt. So imagine how you treat people who don't have a title, people who don't own the building, people you think can't fight back. Someone in the back muttered an apology. No one else spoke. This isn't about hurt feelings, she said. This is about values, about what this company is, or should be. Then she dropped the hammer. As of this moment, every single one of you is suspended, effective immediately. The reaction was instant. Mouths opened. Protest rose. No exceptions, she said firmly. You're going home today without a paycheck to lean on. And if you want to come back, you'll come back under new terms. She paused. Let it breathe. This isn't a game. This is your wake-up call. Ariana tried to speak, but Leona raised a hand. We don't reward toxic behavior here. We don't ignore customers because they're wearing thrift store jeans. And we don't allow leadership to rot while the front line collapses. She turned toward the large front windows, now dimming with the early sunset. Tomorrow morning, I'll be back. I'll have a new code of conduct in my hands. If you show up, you'll sign it. If not, your time here ends tonight. Her eyes scanned the room. This business isn't built on cars. It's built on trust, on how we treat people when no one's watching. And today, you failed that test. Then she stepped back, quiet again. No one followed her. No one moved. It wasn't just shame. It was recognition that what had just happened would live in their memory and probably in a viral video forever. The next morning, the energy in the showroom was completely different. Gone was the arrogance, the swagger, the casual cruelty. Only 6 of the original 14 employees returned. No one wore tailored suits. No one made jokes. They stood quietly in a circle, avoiding eye contact, waiting. Leona entered from the front this time. No disguise, no mask. She held a stack of papers, simple documents, clear, plain spoken. The new code of conduct. 3 pages, no legalese. Respect is not optional. Customers come first. Judging others by appearance, background, or accent is cause for dismissal. Every employee, including management, is held to the same standard. 3 violations? You're out. 1 violation with cruelty? Immediate termination. She didn't hand them out right away. First, she spoke. I'm not here today to shame anyone. I'm here because I believe people can grow. She looked at Ariana, whose makeup-free face looked 10 years younger. Sometimes we get caught up in habits. We normalize things that shouldn't be normal. Her voice was gentler now, but still steady. You all have a choice. If this culture wasn't for you, no harm in walking away. But if you stay, you live these values. No excuses, no half measures. Devin stepped forward first. No smugness, just quiet resolve. I was wrong, he said. I let this place go. He signed. Jared followed. Then Ariana. Each name signed was another small fracture in the wall they'd all helped build. They didn't apologize with words. They did it with ink. The showroom stayed quiet for a long time. Later that afternoon, a young family came in. Father, mother, daughter, nervous, dressed simply, looking for their first family car. Ariana approached them with a bottled water in hand and a genuine smile. She didn't fake it. She didn't pitch right away. She asked about the little girl's favorite color. Leona watched from a distance. She didn't step in. She just nodded once. It was working. Not finished. Not perfect. But real. Sometimes redemption doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives on a quiet Saturday morning in the form of a conversation that starts with kindness and ends with trust. The next few days felt like stepping into a different universe. The gleam of the showroom was still there. The polished floors, the soft hum of filtered air, the quiet tick of luxury clocks on the walls. But the tension, the edge, the smugness, that was gone. Leona arrived early every morning. No more disguises, no more hidden cameras. Just herself, a black notebook in one hand and a folded laptop in the other. She greeted the cleaning staff by name, brought coffee to the front desk assistant, and spent her first hour walking the floor, watching, listening, feeling. Only 6 employees returned after the suspension. Of the ones who stayed, not a single one showed up the same way they had before. Devin, the former manager, had stopped wearing his gold tie pin and started arriving early to prep the floor. He didn't hide in his office anymore. He stood up when customers walked in. He greeted people with eye contact, not obligation. Jared, usually glued to his phone, now carried a small notepad and took actual notes on client preferences, on follow-ups, on who seemed nervous and might need a little extra time. Even Ariana, the one who used to file her nails during work hours, had swapped her heels for sensible flats and helped a first-time buyer understand financing without talking down to her. It wasn't magic, it was accountability. Every returning employee had signed the new code of conduct, but more importantly, they had internalized it. Because this time, the expectations weren't buried in HR policies or vague mission statements. They were lived. Each day, Leona gathered the team at 8 a.m. No formal meeting room, no PowerPoint, just a circle on the showroom floor. She opened each day with a 5-minute reflection. Sometimes it was a story from her early years, like selling a used Civic to a grandmother who cried because no one else treated her with respect. Other times it was something from the news, a viral video about workplace bias or a story of a company that lost millions after ignoring its front line. The stories weren't lectures, they were reminders that people mattered, that respect wasn't earned by looking rich or sounding polished. It was owed up front to every person who walked through the door. And something else began to shift. Customers noticed. They lingered longer, asked more questions, left 5-star reviews without being asked. One afternoon, a retired mechanic came in looking for a truck. He wore a camo jacket, old boots, and smelled like motor oil. A year ago, Jared would have pretended not to see him, but now Jared walked straight up, asked what brought him in, and offered him a seat. That man bought a brand new Silverado by the end of the hour. Leona didn't need spreadsheets to measure success anymore. She could see it in posture, in tone, in body language, but she still kept notes. In her black notebook, she tracked patterns. Who offered to help without being asked? Who followed up with the elderly couple who needed a ride home? Who remembered the kid's name on the service ticket? This wasn't just culture change. It was cultural engineering. It wasn't about punishing mistakes. It was about designing new defaults. Defaults that replace snap judgment with curiosity. That swapped image obsession for empathy. One morning, Leona sat with Devin in what used to be his glass office. They looked over the old organizational chart. "What if we flattened this?" she asked. "Less hierarchy, more support." He blinked. "You mean like shared leadership?" "Exactly. Mentors, not managers. We teach by example, not command." Devin nodded slowly. "I think I can live with that." He paused, then added, "I wish I had seen it sooner." "You weren't the only one," she replied. They called it the reset plan. No title upgrades, no inflated egos. Just a new model. Every week, the team rotated responsibilities. One week, Ariana shadowed the service department. Another week, Jared worked front reception. Each person took a turn in the customer's shoes. They called it floor flipping, an exercise in empathy, but also a crash course in humility. And it worked, because understanding begins where assumption ends. The local buzz started picking up. People who'd sworn off the dealership came back just to see if the rumors were true. One man said, "I heard y'all fired everybody." Leona just smiled. "Not everyone, just the excuses." The media got wind too. An online business blog ran a feature called "The Dealer Who Fired Her Whole Team and Got Her Soul Back." It went viral. But Leona didn't care about going viral. She cared about being real. The team grew slowly. She hired with intention, not just for experience, but for presence, for warmth, for people who didn't rush to talk, but knew how to listen. The interview process changed too. Applicants weren't just asked about sales numbers. They were asked, "Tell me about a time you were wrong and what you did next." Or, "How do you treat people who can't do anything for you?" Because Leona wasn't looking for perfect. She was looking for honest. And the results spoke louder than any marketing campaign ever could. Revenue climbed back, not because of discounts or gimmicks, but because customers trusted the experience. Return visits went up, so did employee retention. And for the first time in years, Leona slept through the night, not because the work got easier, but because it was finally aligned with who she was. One evening, as she walked out under the soft glow of the lot lights, she paused at the edge of the sidewalk. A teenage girl walked past, holding a flyer for a job fair. She glanced at the dealership, then at Leona. "Do they hire people who've never done sales?" she asked shyly. Leona looked her in the eye. "We hire people who care. Sales we can teach." The girl smiled, and something about that moment stuck with Leona. Because for all the systems, policies, and metrics, Real change was made one moment at a time. One conversation, one second chance. Some problems don't scream when they enter the room. They whisper. They wear suits. They smile. And if you're not paying attention, they start making decisions. Leona had almost missed it, not because she didn't care, but because she trusted too long, too blindly. She believed the people she'd hired would carry her values forward. But values, left unchecked, can be rewritten in silence. That was the real danger. It wasn't one bad joke or one customer being ignored. It was the slow corrosion of culture, hidden behind polite greetings and pristine floors. The assumption that no one's watching, the belief that success justifies attitude. But the truth is, how a company treats the least powerful person in the room says everything about what it really stands for. And Leona had seen enough. She didn't just course correct. She tore out the rot and rebuilt the structure, not with punishments, but with purpose. She didn't want her employees to fear her. She wanted them to remember what dignity feels like when it walks through the door, to remember the cost of assuming someone's worth based on what they wear, how they speak, or what car they drive. Because you never know who you're talking to. It could be a first-time buyer with bad credit and a bigger heart than anyone in the room, or it could be the owner of the building, disguised in thrift store jeans and a borrowed car, testing whether you deserve to stand beside her. Leona's father once told her, "When you see a problem, crush it so it never comes back." But crushing a problem isn't just about firing people or rewriting policies. It's about telling the truth out loud. It's about saying, "This isn't who we are, and it won't be who we become." Her dealership wasn't perfect. It never would be. But now it was honest. It was intentional. It was built on the belief that people can change, but only when they're held accountable, when they're challenged, when they're led with clarity and care. What Leona did that week wasn't just clean house. She lit a match in a dark room and forced everyone to look. And in that light, they had a choice, to turn away or to change. Most people don't get a second beginning. Leona created one, and she made sure the story of what happened didn't fade. Because somewhere, someone is sitting in the corner of a showroom invisible, waiting to be seen, waiting to matter. And maybe, just maybe this time, someone will notice.